All right, very good. We have a nice variety of various levels of hospital. Hopefully everyone has had a chance to review the minutes from our last meeting in October 28th, 2024. We'll need to approve those minutes, so if I can have a motion. Second. Okay, it's been properly moved in second to approve the meeting minutes. Does anyone dissent? All right, very good. Minutes are accepted. Now we are going to get into some Georgia Trauma Committee updates, starting with the legislative session updates.
Shortly, this is good. Good morning. So for those of you who were not or were at the commission meeting, some of this yesterday and some of this might be a little redundant, but I just wanted to make sure that you all were aware that another huge win. I think this group knows that last year's session, Dr. Ashley went forward with a $61 million ask. It was a pretty bold ask, but we have great readiness cost data thanks to the work of your teams at your centers, completing the trauma center readiness costs, including the level 3s and 4s, which we got a couple of years ago, but we did a lot of calculations and just figuring out exactly what we would need to get a trajectory of stabilization. So you always have to ask for a lot, right? Dr. Walker, so you know, we know that how that works. But so we ended up last year with $4 million, and the $4 million is in the base budget again this year. So it's great news, and so you all will be, that will be spread amongst most of it. As with our regular funding, once we remove the operations line item and then some of the system initiative line items, the rest is generally split 80-20 between the trauma centers and EMS. So that would mean about 3.2 would be distributed over the trauma center. And then just to refresh your memory, after we did that analysis last year on what would be needed to stabilize the system, the level 3s and level 4s, for the first time since the inception of the funding formulas, we changed the way money is distributed to level 3s and 4s. It used to be at a stipend level, and it was embarrassingly low. So I think the level 3s at inception got 25,000, then it was bumped to 50, then it went to 75, and the level 4s got $10,000. Now, we base all of that off of the readiness data that we get back from you. So since we got that level 3, level 4 data, and you'll hear Dr. Ashley, when he talks with the legislators, he always says trauma is the best value because what the super speeder revenues generate and what you get is 6 cents on the dollar, basically, for what it costs. But because level 3s and 4s were at the stipend level, they never got a share of percent of the cost, but they do now. The level 3s, the average readiness cost, just to refresh you, average readiness cost for a level 1 based on our data, 10 million, level 2, 4.9 million, level 3, 1.7 million, and level 4, 80,000. Now, level 4, that's got to be way too low. When we redo this again, we're going to try bolster up support. And some of you are in big systems where you have level 4s, and we're probably going to count on you to sort of help us and help some of the folks that are at the rural centers that maybe aren't part of bigger systems to try to really quantify these costs. It might not be much higher, but we certainly believe it's a lot more than 80,000. So now the level 3s, when you spread the money across the pot, everybody is at about 8 cents on the dollar. Because the level 4s, the readiness cost data was so low, we're funding them at 50 cents on the dollar. The stabilization plan was to try to get it to 100%, but because we, only got 4 million, we had to kind of meet it halfway. So the level 4s took a nice, got a nice increase, and then the level 3s are at about 175,000 now, I think. So that was a really nice increase too. So you should see that again in this coming year's budget as long as we make it through. There is a lot of consternation, I will say, on the capital because of what's happening at the federal level. And they were moving through the FY26 like a freight train, and then now it's still moving through, but because there's so many agencies that draw down federal dollars, there's concern that they may want to wait to find out what the total impact is, and you guys know that DCH and DPH pull in a lot of federal dollars, so they may want to wait to find out what the impact is going to be to those agencies before they figure out. So, but we were told before this thing. So, and then there is a National Lobby Day, Trauma Center Association of America. I know many of you are members. If you're not, happy to share information with you. It's a great organization, and we've done, obviously they did our financial webinars, that their expertise is really in finance and billing, coding, all of those things that can help you be successful in your center. And the reason that we're so focused on that is because in the code that created the commission that talks about funding distribution, the trauma trust funds are to be the payer of last resort. So the work that we do with you to make sure you're maximizing your billing opportunities, make sure that those money that come in again are the payer of last resort. So TCAA is having their lobby day on April 2nd. They have a great what is it called? Lobby institute or something. They have like a really good day before, really very thorough prep session. Scenario based out. We've never done it before. So you have to prepare you know to break it off there yourself. You want to instead of the day before, I don't know before. And do you remember if there was any? I know that behind the scenes they're working on potentially coming up with some trauma specific billing and coding, because the DRGs just don't reimburse you what you need. It's sort of the sad state of affairs in that respect. I don't think there's a specific ask like there has been in days past. Zero funding.
One of the things they're working on, but now who knows with the situation federally, but Mission Zero funding is something appropriating for it. Mission Zero has, they have limited appropriations. They wanted to increase taking Mission Zero projects that they have out there, and Charles Center grants. They're looking at funding that. So they got it in the language. It's a little complicated name after they changed the name of the legislation, but they had Trauma Center grants in there. But for those of you that don't know, TCAA is the organization that established the 688 revenue code for trauma centers. So they were instrumental in that. We wouldn't have it if it were not TCAA. They work very closely with CMS to identify that. So now they are working on our behalf as well to come up with trauma-specific DRGs. And it took a while to get the 688 revenue codes, which is going to take a while, but they do a lot of work to advocate behind the scenes that it's probably worthwhile. If you're not familiar with it, just at least to do a little bit of investigating, because what they're working on right now definitely impacts from center finance. Right, the administrators out, they always for.
And then we're having our own, the Georgia Trauma Foundation is doing Trauma Awareness Day at the Capitol next Wednesday. So there's been a lot of communication going out about that. So certainly we love the presence. Again, there's no particular ask for that, but just to thank them for their support. And I thank them on behalf of all of you for the $4 million last year and for this year, and just expressing our gratitude to their. I know, did you want to talk a little bit about
Sure. So a couple weeks ago, MAG had their day at the Capitol, and I wasn't able to attend that. I will also be at Trauma Awareness Day. MAG is the Medical Association of Georgia, and so that was a great day. And during that day, I learned about some of the legislative issues that aren't necessarily trauma specific, but I think they can potentially affect our trauma programs, if not our facilities. And so as administrators, I just wanted to mention a few of those things. The insurance vendor RFP, I don't know if that's something that you're all aware of. It happened last year where the state of Georgia is looking at their Medicaid vendors, and two of the previous vendors that have been, contracted for Medicaid services, Peach State and AmeriGroup, for many years, they have been shut out. And that's a huge deal, particularly in our market. We have a ton of Peach State, patients, in, various settings. And so, they are appealing that ruling right now, and we probably won't find out the outcome of that until, later on this year. But if that transition occurs, of course, those people that were covered under Peach State and AmeriGroup are not going to be without coverage. They will be moving to one of the new vendors that have been chosen. But of course, that means a transition, right? And every time there's a transition, we all know about, Medicaid appointment that we just went through, which was a complete disaster. So having to do this again, means that there are some people that are going to be caught in the gap with that. So it's just an area of awareness for you all to understand that this is potentially on the horizon. That new vendor transition won't happen until mid-2026. So we do have a little bit of time, but something to keep on your radar. Also, in terms of GME funding, some of you are at teaching facilities and have, residents at your teaching facilities for the last, I think, 3 years. It's probably the third year. The federal government has actually increased, or made some new funding to increase, slot for graduate medical education programs. At our facility, we have been awarded for the last 2 years some additional funding to go with those blocks. That's been exciting. They're primarily looking at primary care and rural focused programs. So if you haven't been taking advantage of that, make sure your DIO is aware. I'm pretty sure everybody is at this point, but just wanted to bring it up in this setting for those of you that have opportunity to increase your program, but your hospitals may not have the funding it needs to do that. This is an opportunity to have the federal government pay for that funding as opposed to our hospitals having to, budget for that. I think there's only 5 years, and I think this is the third year, so we've only got 1 or 2 more years. I may have my years slightly wrong, but we're coming to the end of that. And who knows what's going to happen after that. So again, if you're not up on that, talk to your DIO or your residency program leaders to make sure that you're not missing out on any opportunities for that. Yeah. That's all that I have. I said, okay, yep. Yep. Okay. Well, I think that is all of our standing agenda items. So we're going to move into our new business. So Liz is going to give an update on our PBT.
Okay, so for performance-based pay, I know this caused a lot of consternation, so we've got some good revisions that we hope will be, we hope are going to be helpful. So I'm just going to give you a prelude to this, so we put a work group together and you'll see a little bit more. So we established a work group and we put out a call to all of our trauma center stakeholders to, it's been a little while since we've taken a deep dive on the space pay criteria. I will say that it's very popular when we're presenting to the General Assembly, we always say we're not begging, we make folks have to do things for the money, it's just not happening. So they like that ability. So where we're at right now, you see at GTC committee review. So yesterday, you were programmatic staff at GTC heard this, and the medical directors are hearing it next door. Then once we'll take back any feedback that we got at these meetings, we'll take back to the work group, and we may make some minor revisions, but we're going to do what we did before, which is an open comment period. So you'll get just a very simple survey monkey and you can go through and give us feedback, because this is not meant to be a got you. This is meant to be what's meaningful in terms of engagement and in terms of, we want to move more to outcomes. You know, we still need to get people in meetings so we can make sure you're in the loop and you're aware of what's happening, but we want to move to more outcomes-based, especially now that we've made such a significant investment in the risk-adjusted benchmarking program, down to the level 4 center level with that. So the open comment period will come next. That should be within a month or so. And then whatever revisions are made, the open comment period feedback will again go back to the work group, and then the final adjustments will be made, and then it will go to the GTC Finance Committee for review, and ultimately to the Commission to pass, and will become part of your contracts for the FY 2026 cycle. So this is kind of our, it says important dates, but this is our proposed deadline, because of course the relies on us, you know, getting open comment, or getting enough comment, making sure. And but our target really is to get it to the Finance Committee by April, because the Commission meets again in May, and then again in implementing. So we appreciate the work group that got together on this. They looked at not only the criteria, but the percentages. The percentages by level are not going to change. Level 1s and 2s are at 80%, level 3s are at 60%, and level 4s are at 19%. But we're going to implement what we're calling tiered metrics, and I'll show you that in a moment. These are the work group members. We have pretty decent representation across the board. At least everybody is at the table. So thank you to the centers who are allowing your folks to serve on that committee. And so what we decided to do, since meeting attendance is, you know, it's a challenge, we understand this, and I think the problem was the way we had it written, that it was all or no risk. So in other words, we had the 3 of you, your trauma program staff, your administrator, and the medical director tied to the criteria. So if one didn't make it, it was too much risk. You all lost it. So we broke that out by role, and we also broke it out. We want the in-person like this is really important, so that's weighted a little heavier. But out of the virtual meetings, if you attend all, you get full credit. If you only attend 3 or 4, you get partial credit. So in other words, again, not losing the whole thing because you missed one meeting. So it should be a little bit easier for folks to get most of, if not all, credit for that. I know you can't see this, and we can certainly share this, but when you look at the criteria, and we modeled this after, you know, we were thinking, how can we not make this meeting attendance have such a hard fight? Our colleagues in Michigan, who we look to a lot for the Georgia Quality Improvement Collaborative, because they have a big statewide, they started this first with their individual risk adjusted benchmarking. They have meeting attendance as well. They're funded by Blue Cross Blue Shield, and their centers get money when they perform better. So they have tiered meeting attendance. So we essentially modeled it off of that. So when you see it, you're going to be like, oh my God, there's so much criteria. It's not more criteria. It's just breaking it out so there's less risk to you if you miss one meeting or not. So here's just an example. So and this is for your appointed senior executive. So again, you can see the in-person meeting at our winter meeting has its own separate, and either you did or didn't attend that, right? So there's a 10% associated with that. But then, of course, if you don't attend anything, you're not going to get anything. But then, at least if you only miss one, again, there's not that whole amount. And then, for the first time, we are going to introduce outcome measures. The outcome measures will be $0 at risk because it will take some time to review data on this. And again, this isn't meant to, it's not meant to take money away from you, but what it is meant to do is make sure everybody is following best practice, and we're going to use our data to show what that looks like and how the centers, what the baseline compliance is. So the first one will be VTE prophylaxis, and that has been a little bit of a struggle, and we're going to base whatever the threshold will be based on kind of the median and where we are performing now against what national should be, and then timely repair of geriatric hip fractures. Of course, this excludes pediatric centers, and there is some discussion about excluding peds for VTE prophylaxis because that population was selected for, and they don't participate in MT post, so that's not counted for them as well. So, so it's a little bit different for the peds population. But those are the two, and again, 0%, because we just want to make sure where is everybody, who's at risk based on what the data is showing, and what are the barriers. So the goal is to just make sure again that we're decreasing variation in care. This at the GQIP meeting, Dr. Ashley is going to present some data that you will all be very interested in. It has to do with our hospital complications and what has happened over the last 5 to 7 years with the migration to ACS verification, and how our outcomes have improved dramatically since going to requiring ACS verification. So of course the performance on some of these measures really reflects that. So, and here you'll see that where we have the criteria set out. So this is not, again, not baked in stone, because we're still evaluating our own data from our centers as to where they're performing. So for VTE prophylaxis, again, greater than or equal to 16 years of age, if you're at 50% less than or within 48 hours, I should say, then you would get full credit. Of course, these are the tiers. Everything again is 0%, but this is just breaking it out so that you can understand when there is a percent applied to that, and wherever your center falls, I would make sure when you go back, talk with your trauma program manager and find out where you are. This is for the level 1s and 2s, not introducing this to the 3s, and most 4s do not admit patients. It may be something coming in the future, but because we are getting level 4 data into our central repository, and then you can see again for the geriatric hip fracture timeliness repair what the targets are there. Again, within 48 hours, so the metric there would be if you're greater than or equal to 90%. So when the open comment period comes out, please again give us feedback. Just highlighting some of the new criteria for level 1s. This was one of the things that Dr. Ashley is really striving for, is would like to put together a research group, since the level 1s have a scholarly activity requirement. This is the group that we should really be coming together to look at some of these things in our state that are really impacting outcomes, and that would be a great group to do that. Again, this will be another 0% because we will just be getting it confirmed, so it's not something that would have dollar amount assigned. So we're asking for a physician. Really, it does not have to be your surgeon. We know your surgeons are busy, but some of you have orthopedists in your house that is really interested in you might have a neurosurgeon, really interested in TBI. It could be anybody who has an interest, who wants to investigate. So that'll help us collaborate. And then the registry education, this is really for level 4 centers, because we want them, we want really good data, and we're going to support this financially, but we want them to have one of the following courses. When you talk with them about this, when the open comment period comes out, they'll help you kind of understand this a little beyond the scope of what we can go into today. But there's also a continuing education requirement. The American College of Surgeons will be releasing new level 4 criteria, and that will be open for comment, I believe, in March. So we'll make sure that we're looking out for that, and we will push that information out to you. This is going to be really important to get feedback on what the new iterations is. It's essentially been ignored since the hard book. And then just some other quick changes. We're now having change logs, so you can see what was there, what was removed, what was revised. We'll keep track of that. Now the cadence is going to be a little bit different because we're trying to make it easier in terms of for contracts. We don't want your trauma program managers really busy. A couple of years ago, we went to biannual payments instead of having it invoiced quarterly. I think overwhelmingly folks love that. But what we need to do is try to get away from doing these amendments. Of course, we do amendments. We have additional monies to move to you, but we want to move it back almost like your uncompensated care, where that is 3 years into the future. The reason for that is we need a full year of to meet the requirements for the claims. You have to have attempted collections. There's a lot of criteria around that. This is really only for the 1s and 2s, because the reason for is not yet anyway. We don't have enough compensated care method. So your PVP score will impact the year after, just to keep it a little bit cleaner and allow you a little bit more time financially to prepare for that if there are deductions. So that's a little bit about what it would look like. Your scorecards would be due in April, or they were due in April before. That was a little crazy because we get towards the end of the year. And moving forward, they'll be due in August. So your PVP year will be consistent with your contract year, which will be July 1. And then obvious cadence, more aligned with the contract. That's it, unless there's any questions on that. A lot more to come on that, but we just wanted to give you a little prelude before the open comment comes out and make sure that you're communicating with your program managers on.
So one comment that I just like to make, that I'll make sure goes into the open comment section, is, I mean, I think that the introduction of outcome measures is sort of natural progression for where we're at. You know, it took several years. Now we've got everyone ACS verified. So now it's time to sort of leverage what that means for us. And like Liz said, Dr. Ashley is going to be sharing the recent paper that was just published that shows that, you know, having this collaborative and having everyone be ACS verified, we're already getting the benefits out of that. So now, you know, let's look at outcomes and let's make sure that we are all, you know, practicing in a manner that means our outcomes are really going to be benefiting. And it's, we say outcomes, but we mean our patients, right? That's why we're all here. That's why we all do what we do, is we want our patients to have the best care that we can give them. And that means that we should be following the standard of care, and thus our outcomes should be better. So I honestly think it's great. And in many cases, this is work that we're already doing. I know, you know, honestly, we have, you know, quality metrics, and VTE is definitely one of them. So just to know that at least, you know, the trauma portion of patients, which is not insignificant, is going to be, you know, really scrutinized, not just in our facility, but at a higher level. I think that's going to give some additional emphasis when I go out and talk to my surgeons and say, hey guys, what are we doing here? Let's get our, you know, VTE numbers up. So I think this will be really a good thing. All right, any questions or comments before we move on to the next topic? So now we want to give an update on the Trauma Center Finance API worksheet, which is you all works with your finance people to get that turned in. So let's get an update on that. Perfect. All right. First of all, thanks again for all of your support, because recall the 2 webinars that we had last year. We had 150 participants on them, and people stayed from the time of the webinar until the very end. So it was pretty amazing. And then right before the holidays, I sent out a KPI tool and asked us to fill out. I think we got 16 of them back. And I know that was a quick turnaround. And again, I really appreciate it, because just to remind you, the genesis of this was that last year when we went to ask for 61 million, one of the legislators stood up and asked, well, why do trauma centers need all this money? Don't you make a lot of money on activation? We really need to, there's a lot of physicians in the general. So, and some of them have heard things about this, but again, if they're not practicing it, they don't understand how it works. So that's why we really wanted to kind of, again, going with the code that says, trauma custody payer of last resort is responsible to figure out. I don't want to know how much you're charging or how much you're getting on how many things you guys can tell that. It's really hard. Everything is wrapped up in the DRG, essentially. But just to know what level of success are those tasks. So going through and having Valerie, who's amazing. She does a lot of work, by the way, up in DC and works with GCAA up there. She's
I think one of the major drivers behind trying to get some of these trauma codes, because we know that we're not getting reimbursement, but so 16 of you submitted them, and some of you did an amazing job going all the way down through the OFIs, and your teams were amazing. Some action plans moving forward. So by and large, the biggest issue that we found, and I've been working with JHA on this, is that and I know not all of you attended the webinar, but you probably have heard this. There is a registration type that is known on your patient registration as field locator 14, and there's a type. And for trauma, it has to be type 5 to be recognized, to be able to put in the activation code. And apparently for Georgia Medicaid does not accept FL14 type 5. They only accept type 1. And thank you to Brady and to EU for you guys, I think, noticed this pretty quickly. So I've come to understand that there is going to be the software that Medicaid uses is undergoing transition. Have any of you heard about this? So apparently there are known issues with the coding inconsistencies between Georgia Medicaid and NUBC, which everything has to be NUBC compliant, but they're not wanting to make any changes in their coding software until they move to the new software. So I'm working closely with GHA to get updates on that, because they seem to be in the know, because they said, oh yeah, we've got a list of other things that are not NUBC compliant. So unfortunately for you, if you're, I'm sure it's hard to type 1 somebody and then type 5 someone else for your commercial payers. So that's going to continue to be a challenge. But I think that's probably the biggest focus that we need to kind of work on now. And then some of the PI folks who said, what were they going to do? It was really just about getting all of the folks across your teams connected, like finance with the biller coders, and making sure that whoever your data team who are capturing all these activations, they're making sure that the biller coders know. And some of you, even your folks, I want to say it's a couple folks from Piedmont, some of you I know have developed Epic reports that cross over into your finance system. So I think what I'd like to do, I know we're throwing a lot out there, and we're going to talk about readiness costs in a minute, but I'd like to see who has developed really good reports that potentially you can share. Why reinvent the wheel? Who need to have some kind of tool that they can make sure that all the patients. So I think what would be meaningful is the next steps would be to look on the claim side to find out if you got everything right. The FL14 type 5 and the 68X and the 0450 codes. To what extent are you being successful with that? Regina, you probably have some comments on that, because I'm not sure, like, how much will we be able to get numerator or denominator? I would love to say that. Like, when a Georgia legislator stands up and says, well, you guys are making money off the activation fees, right? I'd like to say, well, X% don't ever get, those claims aren't filed. I'd love to have a number to be able to tell that. I don't know if we'll be able to get there, but you have people who.
Yeah, I think we're moving in that direction. Programmatic staff, medical directors, and the finance people who speak 2 different languages, and it's something that takes a really long time. And I think we're getting to a point in our programs where you have to have that understanding of financial language, and I think the finance people are understanding that. Programmatic staff are asking a lot of questions about understanding compliance. There's a lot of detailed rules around compliance, which is their subject matter expertise, but our subject matter expertise is what does that look like from the clinical side, and how does that get documented appropriately to capture. It's going to be really key for those of us who are all on Epic to really identify, is there a mechanism by which we can have automated reports that we feel comfortable with the output being reflective of the financial status of these codes, and not doing hand pulls and hand picks. I think that's where, we have some issues with the quality of the data that's coming out. So we're in testing right now too. We're doing the same thing, doing the same thing, trying to come up with, are there some reports, and I think we all need to work together once we kind of get something that looks like it might work, fine tune it, polish it, share it, and then start pulling those numbers together. Obviously, we're not asking for what are your charges and what are your reimbursements, but I do think we could get to a number of, on all the patients who qualify under type 5, the different payers that we have, how many are we getting any dollars reimbursed for? The sick data revenue code, and the part that is elusive for me still a little bit is for the roll up DRGs of admissions, how do we quantify that? There is a higher reimbursement rate, but it's based on clinical documentation and care and all these other factors. So that's where we need the finance people to speak, but to translate it to something that we can measure. Then we can really go to the legislators and say, yes, we've investigated all opportunities to maximize reimbursement by the facilities. It is costing them, as we know, and we're going to get into that. Your readiness cost survey, we know it is cost, but it's readiness and what it looks like and why it's important. And now we know how much hospitals are able to try to capture some of that cost and where the gap is and why it's so important for the legislature to support. So I think we can get there. I think our biggest win, I think, is the dialogue that's happening in the financial suites and areas of the hospitals where I've been around a long time, never, I don't know what you're talking about. And now it's just part of I'm shaking her head over there, probably Chris too, and some of my colleagues are like, that's your expectation is to understand all that, be able to speak that speak, and they are also expected to have an understanding of the global aspects we already talked about. You've heard us talk about this over and over. So it's become, I'm not a finance person, I'm terrible at but it's something that I've just been playing about. I'm excited about it. And we together and been a great resource to do with us. And having the program staff and the finance staff in the same room for those webinars were really good. Because we all heard the same message at the same time. It's not, we were focusing on a programmatic staff and trying to educate them, and then they would go back and meet with their finance people. Now we had everybody hearing the same thing and asking questions together, which I think is the best next step.
No, thanks for that, and just make sure you're relevant on what NFL 14 times 5 is 16X and 050. Those three things. What's that? Agreement second. Yes. We're calling it now emergency activation response, because you can't charge us for the activation. You gotta actually have somebody across the threshold of the trauma bay before you can. Huge thank you to you guys. Your teams came to those webinars and they seem to really like it. And I think it empowered them, because now we're lifting the veil on some of these things that were a little opaque for hard. So more to come on that. And again, we'd like to that's kind of the next step.
And so one comment that I would make, I feel like there's a theme developing here with a lot of work in the Medicaid space in the state of Georgia. So you've already heard about the new vendors that, that process is going on, and also that they're upgrading their software. I don't have a timeline for that, but it's going to happen. At the same mandate, the Capital Insurance Commissioner came and spoke, and he was the one that talked about how they are looking at updating that software. And so hopefully that will solve that, level 5 issues that Liz was just talking about. But, in addition to that, one other thing that's going to be voted on during this legislation is the governor's, version of Medicaid expansion that is probably going to be renewed this year. It's up for that original program that he started is sort of up for renewal this year. He's going to be pushing to have that renewed. So it's not going to be Medicaid expansion that, you know, there's a cohort in capital that's looking for what other states have done, and we don't see that happening. What we see is his program is gonna be renewed, and so that is gonna be what we're gonna have to deal with. So as administrators sitting in this room, hopefully all of you know what your payer mix is, you know what your commercial, how many commercial patients, how many Medicaid patients, and then your unfunded patients. And so we all want to maximize the patients that have some form of funding, be it commercial or Medicaid. And, you know, hopefully the Medicaid vendors that we have will be closer to focusing on, you know, as a commercial side, say what you will about MA plans and whatnot, but, you know, their goal is to function much more like commercial payers than what we think of as traditional, you know, Medicaid payers. So, I mean, all of that you have to think about, and you think about that through the trauma lens, but it really affects all patients that are facilities. So I just want to call out the fact that there's a lot going on in the Medicaid space that's important for us to understand. All right, next we're going to have Regina talk about our readiness cost survey.
All right, this is just a teaser, I call it, a little trailer of what's to come. Some of you, I'm curious, who in this room has participated in, or is aware that your son participated in one of some of the earlier readiness? You, okay, all right, good. So, this is how am I? All right. So this slide basically just goes over a little bit about the history of how many readiness cost surveys that we've done. Some of you may or may not know that Georgia is well known nationally. We've published on this data because we have developed a tool that's been validated. We'll talk a bit about the tool. And it's been replicated in some other states as well to utilize. So we put a lot of work in early on when we first started this journey. We weren't really sure what we were doing. We wanted to just try to capture what it costs to be a hospital. You lose the readiness cost that you know you have to have all the physicians on call, ready to go to month's notice, you have to have the equipment available, you have to have blood on hand and so forth. So we started doing these surveys, and as we began to get information in from these centers, we recognized and identified that there was wide variation across centers when they were reporting. Maybe we just step back a little bit. So we put a work group together, a stakeholder group, along with commission members, and we began to look at what's the specific detail do we need, how do we define those level of details, because my interpretation of OR availability might be different than somebody else's OR. So we refined the tool, we refined the definitions, and for the ones and twos, you can see the last calendar year date that we collected data from was 2016. We've also collected data on level 3 and 4 centers. That's never been done anywhere else in the country in an attempt to categorize what is it costing level 3 and 4 trauma centers to sustain that level of readiness. So we published that as well, and you'll be hearing a little bit about that also. So we are going to embark on our next iteration of this, and it will change specifically again to the level 1 and level 2 trauma centers. So, I should have looked at my slides. Originally, this is what the tool looked like. It's not really important that you know what the tool is, but basically, how much green does it take to go orange? The orange was the standards at the time. We aligned all the required standards to line item of expenditure, and you can see the level 1 was about $10 million, level 2 under $5 million in cost. And you already know, as administrators, one of the significant cost is associated with medical staff coverage. You're probably feeling that immediately in this room with the new requirements of ophthalmology. So it'll be interesting to see how that impacts our next round of surveys. And the lowest cost, no surprise here again, education and outreach. Typically, when you have budget tightening that needs to occur, education and outreach are usually the first on the chopping block. So we saw that reflected in our survey as well. So, I'm gonna, Liz said this so much more eloquently than I could ever say. This man is a role model to all of us on the trauma commission. He was one of their original commissioners, but Liz worked with him personally, so I'm just gonna give a little bit of a background of how we've chosen to honor Dr. Leon Haley.
So Dr. Haley was one of the original commission members, and he was an emergency medicine physician. And I love that picture on the bottom left, is how I remember him in the old red zone at Grady before the Marcus Trauma Center. But he worked his way up in the chain and was the associate executive dean for academic affairs for Grady, for Emory at Grady, and then left Grady to become the CEO at University of Florida in Jacksonville, Florida, sorry. And then tragically, the thing that he fought the most for, he lost his life in a jet ski accident in 2021. Very devastating. The whole Jacksonville community was devastated as well. And so he was instrumental in that first survey when the Georgia Trauma Commission was formed. We got $60 million. And Dr. Ashley always talks about when you ask for money, have a plan, because we had no plans. So Dr. Haley was one of the ones who had to figure out, and he very much risked his own center because he knew that it wasn't that, Grady should get the whole $60 million. So even though he was living and working as a leader at Grady, he said somehow we need a good distribution for all centers across the state. So he put his own reputation out there for his institution and, came up with a really fair, which was the survey that we continue to build on today. So in the paper that we did for the level 3 and level 4s, we actually worked with the Journal of Trauma and Acute Surgery and said, in this posthumously way, we'd like to honor him by renaming the readiness assessment in the Haley model for readiness assessment. So it's a great tribute to him and all of his contributions to the work.
Yeah, he was the founder of the original distribution of funding for the commission, and he was extremely passionate about identifying costs and put us on this path where we are able to cash wins. So it was only appropriate to name it that Haley model, and it's exciting that it's out there in print and publication, and hopefully it'll catch on. We'll start to see it being referenced in other papers as we go. So we miss them. So this has been our APS verification journals. No surprise to any of you in the room. We made the decision that we require APS verification for all of our level 1, 2, and 3 trauma centers because we are the accountability mechanism for trauma care in the state, an externally verified minimum standard, something that makes sense to us. It's not an internal requirement, it's an external national requirement. We're then and evaluate you based on expectations, and you're either meeting them or you're not meeting them. So we embarked on that journey. We supported centers financially by providing reimbursement for them for the cost of visits as well as the verification visits. We have cost of registry so you can collect the data. We did not want and do not want any financial barriers be in place for any centers to participate in our system and to be recognized and verified at whatever most appropriate, we like to call it right sizing, meets their community needs and their center needs. So I really want to emphasize the number center you are means absolutely nothing because a patient could roll in your door, a multiply injured trauma patient that rolls in the door of a level 4 trauma center is no different than a multiply injured patient who rolls in the door of a level 1 trauma center. Now, if you're lucky enough to roll in the door at a level 1 trauma center, there are a tremendous amount of resources available to you that will hopefully improve the likelihood of saving your life. But if you roll into a level 4 center, they have to adapt and overcome, but the expectation of them doing everything they can and having everything in place with the resources they have available to try to save your life is the exact same. package you and get you out to the higher level, more resources. That's all that means. Number of ways to the resources, to be able to do what they need to do for you. So, we are doing that in the process of that. And in 2023, we want to know what's the cost associated with that. We know that there's been multiple changes in the grade book, and now that we are ACS, we're able to say that our centers are meeting a minimum standard. What does that cost? And compare that to the orange book and the original numbers that we had. Because we know, and we've said this, Dr. Ashley said this from the podium, we believe those $10 million and $5 million estimates are low. So you get that slide goes over the centers that have come in, that have out, these centers continue to participate. We had to extend the level 3s. They are also required to have ACS verification, but because of a little something called COVID, they were not able to stay on the exact trajectory we had originally hoped, and so we've extended that date, but everybody will be ACS verified. So you can see here, and I'm not going to say very much about this because Dr. Ashley is going to present this to all of us in the GPIP meeting. But you doesn't take much to know red is bad, black is good. If you want to just look at your TQIP reports, this original TQIP report on the left is our last year's report. This represents the major hospital events, excluding mortality of patients cared for by trauma centers in the state of Georgia. And it doesn't look good, right? And so we looked to see what is the impact of preparing for and becoming ACS verified over time on quality. All I'm going to say about that, you see this slide on the right, significant improvement in all cohorts and categories over time, just preparing and becoming ACS verified. So again, I'm not going to say too much. Dr. Ashley will go into much more detail about that. It's pretty impressive. It helped validate that we were on the right path. This was the right thing to do. It's all about the patients. It always should be. And we've made a difference in improvement in the care that we provide to these patients. So our CY 2024 survey that's coming up, it is based on the grade book. We pulled all the standards. We have a work group, stakeholder group that was pulled together that's led by Gabby. She's done a tremendous job for the cats with this. You can have focused on track with this. We've had to make some revisions to the community model. It's been reformatted. So this is where we are. You see this slide in the format to keep everybody up to date on our journey. It went to the Georgia Commission yesterday. You socialized in the GCT meeting yesterday, so your program staff have seen this. It is also being presented in the next word to the trauma medical director, so everybody's seeing the same information at the same time. We are going to have webinars available for people to participate in and Q&As to go over the changes in the model from the original survey tool that people were familiar with looking at. And then we also want to do, I think we're calling it maybe it says monthly webinars, but they're more like sessions where we'll have subject matter and content experts on the line available to centers where you may have started and you're working through a little bit of the model. You might not be sure how to capture a particular line item. Academic centers that have residency programs is a little bit of nuance and challenge about what does that look like and how do you capture that and where back out some information. The other components that could be a challenge is the new requirements of orthopedic OR available for non-emergent orthopedic injuries. Are we going to capture that? What does it look like? How do you do it? Most centers do not have the ability to keep an OR closed and ready to go at a moment's notice. So, but you have to have an OR available within a set time frame, depending on the level of study you are. So how do you capture that? Some of the time that OR is in use, most of that time do not. So there's a lot of questions that we know that are going to come up. We're going to try to get most of it in the webinar covered, but we know that there'll be questions that as you move through this survey, we want to make sure everybody's on the same page, everybody understands it as best they can, and the data that we collect is clean and compact. So we won't leave you hanging. We will have those available to you, and Liz and her team are always open to phone calls in reaching out, and we're blessed to have a great, painting and account, more than an account, but, Jessica Story's on our team as well. She's very familiar with, she had to dumb it down for Liz and I was going to throw you in the bus with me, and she had to draw these little pies to explain how we were capturing everything, and I was like, oh, I get it now. So, she's really good at helping. So this is our tentative timeline. Again, a very familiar format, 4 years to see where we are with it. And these meetings, we're just starting to talk about it, answer any questions that people may have. The webinars we hope to have up and ready to go in April. With the survey release, there's some work that we still need to do on the survey. It's not quite ready for prime time yet, but it's getting very close. May, June, July, and August, we will have some follow-up webinars or office time, if you will, to be able to clarify any questions. And I know this is probably a scary date, but it's going to be okay, and we all can meet it. It's September 30th. We'd like to have the survey return back to everybody. It would be the requirement of your contract to get it back to us so that we have time to analyze it. I know some folks run different fiscal years by dates. There's a lot of meetings and things in September. Your medical staff and positions likely are going to be gone at that time. So please plan accordingly. We wanted you to be aware of what that date was so you could start thinking about that now, kind of working your internal timelines backwards from that date. There's just a couple of snapshots of parts of the survey that will change. I'm not really going to review them. We're going to a lot of detail. This is part of the PowerPoint that you all will have to look at, but it's just some examples of line items around the general categories that are in the grade book, and some things that are for cost issues for that. Within a few pages, there's the administrative commitment, what percentage of your time is going to be allocated to this as a cost. There's a cost for the time that you're here with us on the meetings versus at your facilities, doing other things. So we want to be able to capture those costs. Just different equipment, facilities. We talked about the OR. So you see it's very detailed. There's lots of instructions to provide for your small, hard to see here, but you can look at this in great detail when you receive it. Personnel, PT, OT, speech, RT, so forth. How do you, if you have a social worker, what percent of the social worker you're going to allocate to trauma? You have a dedicated social worker. And there's just a million questions for the education. How much does it cost others that teach ATLS and PNC and APN, all those hard carrying letter courses? So you teach RTT, you'll tell me the requirement for your registrar level course. There's going to be a cost associated with that. I know we're doing 1s and 2s. Those of you that are not 1s and 2s, then we're on the next, we're going to want to know the cost of 3 and 4 as well. Community outreach time to spend, the giveaways that you have. That's really it in a nutshell. So if you're quiet, I'm going to be really mad because there's got to be a question or concern, something around all that we've done, all the talking up here. I do need water now. So, I want to hear from you. What do you think? Like it, don't like it? You find it intriguing that we collect this information? Familiar with it? How can we use it? What are your thoughts? I'll call on you. Hi, bye. From your specific center or in just aggregate? Yeah. So I will let Liz answer that. She's the distributor of all the keeper of all the information. Like it's
Actually, Jessica Wardy, who many level 1s and 2s, she's worked with Jessica for the uncompensated care. She does the audits, but we don't handle any of the data, and that's because as a public entity, everything that I get is public access. So Jessica, it's a secure file